Scrubbing up dust. Walking past the Crystal Hotel, I saw Jim Martin down on his knees. He was scraping up mud that had dried to crust after the rain mixed with dust Sunday last. When I got home, I took a good look at the steps and the porch and the windows. I saw them with Ma's eyes and thought about how she'd been haunting me. I thought about Ma, who would have washed clothes, beaten furniture, aired rugs, scrubbed floors down on her knees, brush in hand, breaking that mud like the farmers break sod, always watching over her shoulder for the next duster to roll in. My stubborn Ma, she'd be doing it all with my brother Franklin to tend to. She could never stand a mess. My father doesn't notice the dried mud. At least he never tells me. Not that he tells me much of anything these days. With Ma gone, if the mud's to be busted, the job falls to me. It isn't the work I hate, the knuckle-breaking work of beating mud out of every blessed thing. But every day, my fingers and hands ache so bad. I think I should just let them rest. Let the dust rest. Let the world rest. But I can't leave it rest on account of Ma haunting. January 1935. Outlined by dust. My father stares at me while I sit across from him at the table, while I wash dishes in the basin, my back to him, the picked and festered bits of my hands in agony. He stares at me as I empty the wash water at the roots of Ma's apple trees. He spends long days digging for the electric train folks when they can use him, or working here, nursing along the wheat, what there is of it, or digging the pond. He sings sometimes under his breath, even now, even after so much sorrow. He sings a man's song, deep with what has happened to us. It doesn't sing lightly, the way Ma's voice did, the way Miss Freeland's voice does, the way Mad Dog sings. My father's voice starts and stops, like a car short of gas, like an engine choked with dust. But then he clears his throat and the song starts up again. He rubs his eyes the way I do, with his palms out. Ma never did that. And he wipes the milk from his upper lip, same as me, with his thumb and forefinger. Ma never did that either. We don't talk much. My father never was a talker. Ma's dying hasn't changed that. I guess he gets the sound out of him with the songs he sings. I can't help thinking how it is for him without Ma, waking up alone, only his shape left in the bed, outlined by dust. He always smelled a little like her first thing in the morning, when he left her in the bed and went out to do the milking. She'd scuff into the kitchen a few minutes later, bleary-eyed, to start breakfast. I don't think she was ever really meant for farm life. I think once she had bigger dreams, but she made herself over to fit my father. Now he smells of dust and coffee, tobacco and cows. None of the musky women smell left that was Ma. He stares at me. Maybe he is looking for Ma. He won't find her. I look like him. I stand like him. I walk across the kitchen floor with that long-legged walk of his. I can't make myself over the way Ma did. And yet, if I could look in the mirror and see her in my face, if I could somehow know that Ma and baby Franklin lived on in me. But it can't be. I'm my father's daughter. January 1935. The President's Ball. All across the land, couples dancing, arm in arm, hand in hand at the birthday ball. My father puts on his best overalls. I wear my Sunday dress, the one with the white collar, and we walk to town to the Legion Hall and join the dance. Our feet flying with me and my father on the wooden floor, whirling to Arlie Wanderdale and the Black Mesa Boys. Till 10, when Arlie stands up from the piano to announce we raised $33 for infantile paralysis, a little better than last year. And I remember last year when Ma was alive and we were crazy excited about the baby coming. And I played at this same party for Franklin D. Roosevelt and Joyce City and Arlie. Tonight, for a little while in the bright hall, folks were almost free of the dust, almost free of the debt, almost free of the fields of withered wheat. Most of the night, I think I smiled. And twice my father laughed. Imagine. January 1935. Lunch. No one's going hungry at school today. The government sent canned meat, rice, potatoes. The bakery sent loaves of bread. And Scotty Moore, George Nail, and Willie Harkins brought in fresh milk. Fresh, creamy milk straight from their farms. Real lunch. And then stomachs full and feeling fine for classes in the afternoon. The little ones drank themselves into white mustaches. They ate and ate until pushing back from their desks, their stomachs round, they swore they'd never eat again. The older girls, Elizabeth and Lorraine, helped Miss Freeland cook, and Hillary and I, we served and washed, our ears ringing with the sound of satisfied children. February 1935. Guests. In our classroom this morning, we came in to find a family no one knew. They were shy, a little frightened, embarrassed, a man and his wife pretty far along with a baby coming. A baby coming. 2 little kids and a grandma. They moved into our classroom during the night, an iron bed and some pasteboard boxes. That's all they had. They'd cleaned the room first and arranged it, making a private place for themselves. I'm on the look for a job, the man said. The dust blew so mean last night, I thought to shelter after my family here a while. The 2 little kids turned their big eyes from Miss Freeland back to their father. I can't have my wife sleeping in the cold truck. Not now. Not with the baby coming so soon. Miss Freeland said they could stay as long as they wanted. February 1935. Family school. Every day we bring fixings for soup and put a big pot on to simmer. We shared at lunch with our guests, the family of migrants who have moved out from dust and depression and moved into our classroom. We are careful to take only so much to eat, making sure there's enough soap left in the pot for their supper. Some of us bring in toys and clothes for the children. I found a few things in my brother's and brought them to school. Little feed sack nighties, so small, so full of hope. Franklin never wore a one of the nighties Mom made him, except the one we buried him in. The man, Buddy Williams, helps out around the school, fixing windows and doors and the bad spot on the steps, cleaning up the schoolyard so it never looked so good. The grandma takes care of the children, bringing them out when the dust isn't blowing, letting them chase tumbleweeds across the field behind the school. But when the dust blows, the family sits in their little apartment inside our classroom, studying Miss Freeland's lessons right alongside us. February 1935. Birth. One morning when I arrive at school, Miss Freeland says to keep the kids out, that the baby is coming and no one can enter the building until the birthing is done. I think about Ma and how that birth went. I keep the kids out and listen behind me, praying for the sound of a baby crying into this world and not the silence my brother brought with him. And then the cry comes and I have to go away for a little while and just walk off the feelings. Miss Freeland rings the bell to call us in, but I'm not ready to come back yet. When I do come, I study how fine that baby girl is, how perfect, and that she is wearing a feed sack nightgown that was my brother's. February 1935. Time to go. They left a couple weeks after the baby came, all of them crammed inside that rusty old truck. I ran half a mile in their dust to catch them. I didn't want to let that baby go. Wait for me, I cried, choking on the cloud that rose behind them. But they didn't hear me. They were heading west, and no one was looking back. February 1935. Something sweet from Moonshine. Ashby Derwin and his pal Rush had themselves a fine operation on the Cimarron River, where the water still runs a little, though the fish are mostly dead from the dust floating on the surface. Ashby and Rush were cooking up moonshine in their giant metal still on the bank when Sheriff Robertson caught them. He found jugs of finished whiskey and barrels of mash. He found 2 sacks of rye, and he found sugar, 1,000 pounds of sugar. The government men took Ashby and Rush off to Enid for breaking the law, but Sheriff Robertson stayed behind, took apart the still, washed away the whiskey and the mash, and thought about that sugar. All that sugar, 1/2 ton of sugar. Sheriff decided some should find its way into the mouths of us kids. Bake for them, Miss Freeland, he said. Bake them cakes and cookies and pies. Cook them custard and cobbler and crisp, and make them candy and taffy and apple pandowdy. Apple pandowdy? These kids, Sheriff Robertson said, ought to have something sweet to wash down their dusty milk. And so we did. February 1935.